Hello, everyone, and welcome to Futures of Flavors of Sound. This is the composition panel, and it was made possible by the Student Experience Grant, so we'd like to thank them for that. This event is being recorded and then later hosted on our website, so your face and voice will be seen as well as your work on the website. Just wanted to make sure everyone is okay with that and knowledgeable of that. I would now like to introduce the theme, which is of course, compositions. So these are compositions, most of them to do with Journey or other films that the students have composed music to. Sorry, just looking at my script here to make sure I'm not missing anything. I would now like to welcome the panelists. I'm going to introduce them by name, and then I will get them to tell us about their work and what they do. So first, I would like to introduce Chris, who is a lecturer at the university this semester.
Hi, thanks very much for that. And yeah, thanks very much for inviting me to this exciting event. So yes, most of you will know me as a lecturer at the Edinburgh College of Art. And I work as both an academic in the university and as the composer of music. I spent the first years of my working life as a songwriter and a touring musician, and I think I still see combining words and music and crafting albums in the studio as one of the most interesting and fun things you can do. But gradually, from working in studios and making records, I moved more into the world of screen music composition and have enormously enjoyed working as a composer of music for film and TV in recent years, in the UK as well as in South Africa, where I'm from. Thinking about music and how it works in storytelling contexts is something I find pretty endlessly fascinating. And the job of the composer to kind of position music as a force in the context of fictional worlds feels like a really privileged kind of a job. And I've made music for BBC productions, for Channel 4, for Sky, for Netflix and various indie film producers. A series I've recently finished called The Canefield Killings was on Channel 4 recently and is still available on all four. I think that's probably enough from me. But yeah, thanks very much for inviting me, and I'm really looking forward to engaging with you in relation to your fantastic work. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Chris. Now I would like to introduce Joost.
Hi. My name is Joost. Wow. How does one, no worries. It's a difficult name. It's a Dutch name. I'm a composer, musician, audio designer, weirdo from the Netherlands, hence the strange name. Wow. How does one top an introduction like the one from my co-panelist there? So I'm not going to try. I've been a musician, or at least I've been making music for, I think, about 20 years now. And I think I've made video game music for about a little over 10 of those. I started out much like Chris, playing in bands and touring, such as it is in a tiny country like the Netherlands. Mostly in the Netherlands with my first bands and stuff, but a little bit in Germany and the surrounding areas here. And that was really my introduction into composing, writing music together with others. During that same time, I started sort of making music for myself. I didn't want to put my own personal name on that because I always wanted to leave it open for others to come into it. And so I now make music under the name Launchable Socks. That grew out to be not just a way for me to put my own personal creative energies into something, and get a little crazy sometimes, because when I started doing Launchable Socks, it was kind of a way to make sort of jokes with my friends, send each other pretend we were like really avant-garde artists and come up with these crazy titles and then send them to each other and be all snooty like, "Oh yes, we're really on the cutting edge here, kind of as a joke. But that it eventually kept growing and stayed with me until I started rolling into making music for different projects. Video games have always been a passion of mine and a fascination. I've grown up with them, so it kind of came naturally to compose for video games, which in 2012 I worked on the first thing that actually got finished, which was called Cuba. It was a student game from someone in Finland, and then it got downloaded a couple thousand times, which was really quite nice. And the university gave them a little office and the opportunity to make a sequel. So I moved to Finland, and that was my first real experience with game composing. And then later I got the live music bug again, and I created a band around my solo project. And at the same time, I'm still doing music composition. And the latest game I've composed for is called Toem, which was a really great project. It was fantastic to work on. I co-composed it with Jamal Green, who is a composer from the UK, who I greatly look up to. So that was an absolute privilege, and it was a crazy ride. We got nominated for Excellence in Audio, I think was the category at the IGF Awards, and then we got nominated for a BAFTA, which we were absolutely 100% sure we didn't stand a chance of winning, but we did. So yeah, it's been crazy and amazing.
Wow.
I think that's me in a nutshell.
Perfect. That is so much from both of you. That is awesome. Thank you so much. So I'm going to just briefly explain how this is going to work, and then we'll just start off. So obviously this is a composition panel, so we're going to listen to compositions from these students. There are in total 7 pieces of work. I will introduce the student and the title of the work, then the work will be played. We are only playing 3 minutes of the demo clip just to keep things rolling, because we do have a limited amount of time. And then our panelists can discuss the work for about 10 minutes. I am going to, not a hard cutoff. I will let you finish your thoughts and sentences, but we do have to keep it quite tight to those 10 minutes, just because we need to respect time and make sure we get through everyone. So yeah, does anyone have any questions before we start? Any panelists have any questions? Awesome. Without further ado, we're going to start with Samuel Sun and his composition. Okay. That was really, really wonderful. Thank you. Now we will open it up to the panelists. I will choose who goes first, and if you want to argue that, that's perfectly fine. We're going to start with Yost.
With me. Okay. Wow. I love it. I'll start off with that. That's really great. There's a lot of variety. I think something that's really hard to do is you're really using the different dynamics, going louder and softer to accent when you want to accent something. So I think that's done really well. There's these quiet parts, and then when it does blow up, it really accentuates the space that for example, at the end there, when the character sort of rises up those clouds and you see this big open space with a big mountain, and yeah, that's really well done. I really love it. If I had to think of something, there's one specific thing that will come to my mind. There's this quiet part a little bit further back in the beginning where it's just a piano part. It feels a little bit flat to me. Maybe I don't know. Maybe it's a little too quantized or a bit too MIDI-ish or something. That's just kind of a feeling I had. Maybe that's something that you could either not. It feels a bit in the background to me. So maybe that's something that could use a bit more support from another instrument, or just a bit more dynamic playing. But it's kind of I have to say, it's kind of a detail. If I can ask you a question, I think there's several others that have composed for a scene in Journey. I'm guessing that was some sort of assignment that you guys got, or is there a specific reason that you chose either this scene or to compose something for Journey? Or
yeah, I chose Journey because I'm really interested in game sound design and like interactive.
Yeah.
So I tried to like, so for the other course, like interactive sound, I only get to like build the whole like systematic, like whole thing for like a game world, right? So for this one, I know I'll dive in and just do the music part and like really take the interaction in consideration. So that's why I kind of like actually put these things into wise and like with triggers and try to get it work with like operational like looping and stuff. But yeah, that was kind of the approach, because game audio is kind of my like one of the best interests in it.
Yeah, I think you did a great job. There's another question I have then. It's also sort of maybe a bit of an esoteric point. But you composed this to the video, did you? Or did you really program it to trigger different parts?
No, like I did the composing to the video, but like but later I put these loops into Wise to test like the trigger. I kind of like planned in my mind, but other than that, it's all to video. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, because so it's supposed to sort of sound like the way it would in a video game with the transitions. I think that I'm wondering about because there's 2 points where there's really clearly a transition between one part and the next, if I heard right. And there's one where I think the character sort of hits a slope downwards at the beginning. And you can kind of hear a little bit of a cut there, which doesn't need to really be a problem. But it's sort of contrasted with at the end where it sort of perfectly slides into each other. And that feels more like you sort of video composed it, as it were, where you had the liberty to compose for a flat video, as opposed to something that's interactive and that you don't have the control over when exactly the cut is going to be. I suppose that's something to keep in mind, that difference. So if you compose these separate parts that are supposed to play during different phases of the game, different stages of the game, or different stages of a level, then you're not going to have control over when one part goes over into the next, and it can very much pay to sort of be prepared to switch basically at any point. There are other solutions that you can do. I think depending on the game and how you program it, you can choose different parts so that maybe if the player hits a trigger or something, it waits for the next measure or something like that. But that's something to keep in mind, I'd say. But really well done. And I also just wanted to say I love that sort of, I don't know if I can say that, like Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon type violin at the end. Kind of got this Chinese vibe to it. Really great.
That's what I was looking for.
Yeah, well, you nailed it then.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Now Chris's comments.
Yeah, I agree with all of that, and yeah, Sam, it's fantastic. It's really bold and dramatic in all the right ways, and yeah, I think it has serious power. Yes, great use of dynamics. I think your use of pacing is fantastic. The way you get this kind of sense of rolling momentum going works really fantastically. I really like your quiet beginning. Yes, I think always getting as much sort of performance, sort of actual performance into your score as possible, and maybe getting that little bit of piano at the beginning sort of properly performed and recorded would give it a bit more presence there. But I love the quiet start that you give us there. There's a real sense of the kind of the spirit in the spent body of the character lying in the snow, kind of the end of this whole journey kind of thing. I think it's fantastic. And those delicate piano gestures before the strings come in works extremely well. And then the strings as the character raises up, etc. Fantastic. Your sense of the way the pulse develops in that first crescendo that you have, the moving into the sort of the big action, I think that's great. And that transition to me works very well. I think it feels it's got the right kind of rush into that section. That's great. I thought, there are definitely moments where it might be nice to have a bit more interaction with the objects the creature touches, and the more kind of musicalized sense of the sound effects of those kind of interactive moments could be interesting. But there's already so much detail here, and it's already such a substantial piece of work that really isn't a big deal at all. I thought it's the second crescendo for me that doesn't work as well as the first crescendo. You've got this music that is, I think it's in a kind of 6/8 feel. You've got a nice sense of pulse with the piano and the marimba or xylophone music there in the 6/8, and that music just seems to be faded out, and then the big 4/4 music in a different pulse kind of takes over. And that's it. That feels like a kind of a obviously these are difficult transitions when you're not sure how long a sequence is going to run for. But I think that there could be kind of more of a kind of a smooth transition between those things. But once we're into the new music there, I think it works fantastically. I think in the sort of middle towards the end section, we could potentially have a bit more sort of musical variation going on there. Perhaps the pattern gets a bit kind of cyclical, sort of going around. But I do like the way that you are adding new kind of layers with each repetition. So we do get this sense of forward momentum there. But potentially there's a bit more we could do with the forward drive. But you are so completely on the right track there, and undoubtedly works there. So, yeah, fantastic. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, the only thing I would I was really not happy about was the transition into the tunnel, because I was trying to like make a trigger, like make it into transit into something else, but like I don't know why I made the decision to like make it into 4/4 instead of just keep it in a like triple. I don't know. But I was trying to like,
the endless problem, isn't it? You want to keep music with so many different interesting things going along, but you also have to be aware of the issues with interactivity and all of that stuff.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
it's always
Thank
trying to find the balance.
Thank you so much. Sorry, we do have to move on just for the next person. Thank you so much, Samuel.
Well done.
Good job. Yay.
Thank you guys.
Next up with Journey Finale, we have Theo. Thank you so much. That was lovely. I think this time, just to reverse it, we're going to have Chris go first.
Theo, it's great, no question, and it's got such a powerful kind of romantic feeling to it. Again, another sort of bold and dramatic composition for this sequence. Fantastic. It's a real study in kind of textural contrast, which I think works so well as in the way music can change the feeling of pace in the image, the feeling of how time kind of unfolds in the image, and your kind of elastic kind of playing with time there with your music, I think works so well with the experience of kind of being in that flow of images. So yeah, I think it's fantastic. Yeah, that big brassy sort of A major theme near the beginning, that comes out of your very sort of ambient start, I think is fantastic. It gets us into that kind of romantic with a capital R kind of feeling right from the beginning. I think your work in kind of taking us through different kind of harmonic areas in that first half works extremely well, and flows so nicely with the images. It's fantastic. As we're passing through the different areas, a nice sense of voice leading. I thought sometimes your orchestral instruments could sound a bit more realistic, because it's partly, I guess, a case of there's different samples that you're using, but I think also thinking about the sort of individual lines a little bit more could give you a slightly more kind of realistic sense of the orchestration. But the orchestration is generally fantastic. You're using a proper kind of wide range of orchestral instruments and frequencies and textures, and it works really well. I think the cello performance that comes in after that big brassy section takes us into somewhere else. I thought maybe it's a little bit too swathed in kind of reverb there, and takes away from the sort of the intimacy of the kind of human performance there, but in the cello writing. But that's such a minor point, really. But it works really well. I thought that you take us into the kind of slow heartbeat kind of motif at the end, really nicely slows down. I thought we could potentially feel that a little bit more. So more sort of resonant kind of deep low frequencies on that kind of heartbeat thing could get our own hearts kind of in line with that a touch more. But the concept there, I think, is fantastic, and the way you take us out with those long sustained chords and the kind of celeste, sort of subtle, sort of upward moving melodies there into that final C major chord. Great work, yeah.
Thank you. That's very kind of you.
Thank you so much for those comments, Chris. Now, Joost.
I would repeat pretty much all of that what you said. It's wonderful. I have to say I really like that moment when the player goes up to the mountain and you have that cello performance, and it's like you said, it's bathed in reverb, but to me it kind of accentuates that really wide open feeling that I'm a big fan of Journey. I've played it, even though it's a long time ago, but that was part of why that game was so impactful, is because of that sense of space. And I think you've done that wonderfully. That cello is just beautiful and sort of haunting, but at the same time calming or something. That's really well done. I would agree with the heartbeat thing. I don't know if were you going for sort of a heartbeat thing, motif or theme?
Yeah, I was. I'd used it like earlier in the other takes, so I brought it back. But now, since it's been a while since the assignment as well, I can hear could have been a bit better.
That's funny how that works when you go back to something and you hear it with completely different ears. It's a good exercise as well. But yeah, it could use a little bit more depth or something to just make it, like a heartbeat is something that you more feel than hear. So maybe just a sine wave that you just go way low on, or something like that could maybe help sink it sort of into the range of feeling and out of the range of hearing. I think that could really help and elevate it even that much more. If I had to say something else, that brassy part, I could do with a little bit more. To me, it sounded quite brass heavy. It could be something you're going for, in which case maybe ignore what I say. By the way, this is a good general thing. You can ignore anything I say if you so choose, of course. But to me, it felt like it could help if you added something or maybe swapped something around to give us something else to hold on to other than the brass sound, that breathy brass sound. And I would also add, what you said, Chris, about to me there it sounded a bit at its most unrealistic. That sounds ungenerous. It doesn't sound downright unrealistic. And I would also add that you don't have to go for realism. You can go in the opposite direction and get something really great. In fact, sometimes that's when the most interesting stuff happens. Something, MIDI and computers can do stuff that real instruments can't, and sometimes that can be a boon. So you can go in that direction as well. But yeah, then be aware of what you're choosing. I'd say then whether you're going for realism, and if you do, then either maybe find a way to play it for real, or swap something so that it feels a bit more natural, or maybe lean into the unrealistic parts of it and sort of make it your own in that way. But yeah, I loved your piece. And that ending, that swell way at the end. The screen's already gone dark by that point, but we're like sucked into the ending or something, and that's something I really felt as well. So really great job. Well done.
Thank you very much, and well done to Samuel as well.
Yes, thank you so much, both of you, again, for those wonderful comments. Thank you, Theo, for showing us that video. If there's nothing else, we'll move on to the next one. So now we have Lakoza Q1 from Mercy.
ngoba le ndawo mekuyo is holy ground, and then umoya wangakwazi ukumbuka uNkulunkulu noNkulunkulu wamtshela ukuthi ahambe yokhulula kamfaki.
Mama usikhohliwe yonke
Yebo ngobani?
abantu abasekholelwa uNkulunkulu ngaphandle kwethu isikhala la ezansi.
Mina ngiboni kanjalo mfethu. Hambeni.
Kodwa khanya kusavutha nje.
Yabo kuhle kanjani la? Ndawo enhle. Nomuntu muhle. Yazi ngithola umsebenzi msebenzini.
Ungazali kamntwana.
Serious.
Thank you so much, Mercy. That was wonderful, very powerful. We are going to start this panel with Joost this time.
Yeah, that was great. I'm really digging the vibe, the atmosphere. I think you really captured really capture what we were seeing. So really well done on that. It's really hard to do. I don't know if it's constructive to talk about the mix between music and dialogue and Foley, what we hear. I don't know if that's a constructive thing to say, but it was a little bit sometimes hard to hear. Well, the dialogue was very hard to hear at all. Now I don't speak the language, and there were subtitles, but I don't know if that's part of the scope here. So
I could say something here. There's a bit of a problem with the sound generally on that, and the students didn't have any control over what they were
That's
getting
what I
in terms of that. So they did try and as best as they could kind of cope with all that white noise, which is mostly the sea there and the dialogue. But it is a bit of a fight and difficult sound to work with, definitely.
Yeah, for sure. So, ignoring that, then, yeah, I love the really sparse sort of instrumentation you have going. There's this what is it, an oboe and a piano, and that's about it. Something on its way at the end, which I thought was just great, where the boy walks away from the camera and you see this sort of industrial terrain, like industrial area, this big factory or something, and you've got this one synth note sort of coming up, just really connected. What we were seeing with what we were hearing again, that was really great. If I had to give you a note, there was one thing where I was a feeling, because I was so you were taking me along on that journey so well. We were on the beach first, and it was sort of an intimate moment, and then we go to like a wide shot with that truck, and the piano sort of hits these high notes, but then we go back into the truck and it becomes intimate again, and I feel like the piano parts kind of go back to the beach. And it sort of confused the flow a little bit for me. It sort of took me back into where I was kind of wanting to go forward. So I wouldn't know off the top of my head what the best way to go about it, because there are so many ways. Obviously, you could play a different piano thing or change up the instrumentation or something, but I think it could help if you revisit that and sort of think about, is there something that I can do just differently? It could be very subtly different, but then kind of maybe it would help feel sort of accentuate that flow even more, because what you have got going is absolutely fantastic. So very well done.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I just I use a higher octave to transition the three things, and I think I only use piano and clarinet. Only these two instruments. I think is enough to express inner emotions, and they are all actual recording. Yeah,
great.
Yeah.
Sounds great. You can hear it. I think that you can hear that too. That this is real performance, and it translated, and it works very well with what we're seeing. So I love it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, now, Chris.
Yeah, totally. I think that's all really useful advice. I think it feels so full of sort of empathy and feeling for the characters, and I think that works so well. And yeah, I really like your stripped back instrumentation, just to that kind of duet between those two instruments, and then the kind of subtle electronic things that come in at the end. I think you negotiate the dialogue really well. It feels nicely underscored for those moments. It's a short film generally, and it feels very packed with sort of narrative information. and quite a lot of dialogue or other sounds that your music has to negotiate in some ways, and I think you do that very well. There are moments, however, I think where your music could move from the background into the foreground, and I think those are moments that are worth seeking out and trying to, find ways for your music to kind of become, up front and center kind of thing.
Like a player in the film a bit more.
Exactly, yeah. So the underscore bits are perfectly, the tone of it just feels totally right. There's that moment where we get that wide shot of the truck after the initial beach scene before we get into the cabin of the truck. I think that there's a little moment there where your music just sort of hesitates a little bit, where I think it could sort of open up in quite a useful moment in terms of the narrative and a kind of expression of kind of feeling in this strange environment that we're not used to seeing on screen. I think there's something so interesting about that setting in that around that refinery. The same is true of when the boy walks off at the end. I think your music, there's a moment there where the music can really do something as kind of atmospheric and affecting as what's going on in the image. And I feel your music is still in the sort of underscoring mode in those moments, rather than kind of feeling that it can be bolder and a bit more upfront. So that's just maybe something to think about for future projects. But I think you have really good instincts for knowing what kind of music a sequence needs. The only other thing that I think might be interesting to think about is generally the issue of instrumentation. I think you have obviously thought about this a lot, and I think your use of instrumentation here is extremely effective, as I say. But it's something I think about a lot. How does one score these characters, Zulu speaking, living in Durban in South Africa? Is there something strange about using a kind of Western instrumentation in this kind of context? Or is it unfair to not allow a kind of generic film music language to be used for sort of non-Western settings and cultures? I think it's a debate one has with oneself as a composer for each new project. And I don't think there is one right or wrong answer as to what kind of solution you might come up with for each project. But I think it's an interesting idea, and thinking about whether there is something about the kind of Western orchestral instrumentation in this sequence. I love what you've done with it, and I think the instrumentation is actually perfect. But I think these are interesting questions that we could talk about for ages and ages, basically. But I think they're worth thinking about, and I know you have thought about them anyway. So yeah. But yeah, lovely, empathetic, emotive writing. Very nice. Yeah.
Thank you for your advice. I think you mentioned the atmosphere sound when the boy are walking. I think it can be more full in my submission. Yeah, I will try to solve it in the future.
You give us a hint of that electronic stuff, and I keep thinking, could that element, those kind of more kind of textural electronic ambiences maybe become a bit more of a sort of a bigger player in those sequences? I don't know, but it's possible. Yeah.
Yes. Thank you.
Nice. The dialogue even sort of touches upon it a little bit at the beginning of the beach when they are talking about differences between the Western world and Africa, and like they're the only ones that still believe in God and something like that. So that is a very interesting point.
Thank you so much. Those comments were so insightful and helpful. Next, we have Philly and his composition Journey Summit. Thank you so much. That was lovely. We will start our comments with Chris today now.
It's really lovely, Philly. Yeah, that totally gets stuck in your head, and it'll be stuck in my head for the rest of the afternoon, I'm quite sure. It's great, yeah. Strong melodic writing there. Fantastic, yeah. The same sequence, but feels so different to the other takes. Really beautiful sort of ambient beginning, all those kind of long stretched out sounds there, just kind of dragging us along with the character. I think that works really beautifully. The way you sort of pace out your sort of modal melody there, I think giving us sort of hints of it in that first half, and then it becomes more kind of fully orchestrated and more in your face as things progress, I think works extremely well. I love the way you bring that, the sort of subtle percussive elements in about halfway through. That feels, it feels absolutely right that we get that sense of textural shift, but also more kind of forward movement there. I thought maybe it comes a little bit late, and there could be more movement in the kind of first section, which feels beautifully ambient, no question, but we could perhaps have a bit more kind of forward moving flow there. But it's really working. What you did so beautifully in some of the other sequences of this game that I've seen as part of your other submission were those lovely flute rasps that you made part of the kind of sound effects stuff. And there are a couple of those here, but there are moments where I thought we could have more of that kind of engagement with the different images. And the way you kind of musicalize those sound effects, I think works so well that there's no difference between music and sound and the rest of the sound design, etc. And it just helps with kind of overall immersion and sense of a really unique kind of imaginative world. But great, yeah. I think there's the whole issue of sort of harmony is one to possibly think about. We are quite stuck in the kind of Mixolydian mode from the beginning to the end, and it's a fairly longish sequence. A sort of obvious tricky aspect of sort of writing modal music is that it's very difficult to break out of it once you're in it. It's just it's like a lovely warm bath. It's hard to kind of shift into another gear. But actually, when you force yourself to do that, move it up a minor third or whatever the case may be, it suddenly kind of opens up the narrative in quite interesting ways. So that might be something to kind of explore in kind of future work, ways to kind of, absolutely bathe in the loveliness of kind of modal writing, but then find ways that synchronize with moments in the image where you can shift us into a new kind of tonal space, and it just kind of refreshes the palette and opens up things. But use of I really like your mix here, but also the way you're working with organic sounds and more electronic sounds, and the whole thing just feels so beautifully warm and all of a piece. It's got a lovely imaginative, well-crafted kind of unique feeling, which is exactly what you want for a score. And lovely.
Thank you so much for those comments, Chris. Now Joost.
Yeah, I agree. It's a wonderful piece. It's really well made, melodically extremely strong. That what you just played a little bit of the piano on. I agree. It's going to be stuck in my head in a good way. But I also agree with what you said. It's it can be hard to break out of that. And in this case, Well, there's a bit of confusion, at least for me, between, because we're looking at a video of the game. So again, the question is this a composition to the video, or is it supposed to sort of be a composition to the game, if you sort of understand the distinction between those two?
Yeah, I can come in and talk about that. So when I was working through these clips, because we kind of got a playthrough of the game to work with, and then chopped up clips of different sections. For this one, I definitely broke it into kind of 3 kind of episodes within that kind of scene. So you'll see the kind of white screen moment. I kind of built everything with the intention to like have looping sections that would kind of drag out or like condense depending on how long the player takes. And like the end is a really good example, because it looks like the theme resolves perfectly to match the video. Yeah. But the way I built it was that the theme and a kind of theme response sit in kind of round with each other in kind of a fugal layering. So that way, in a context of a game engine or an implementation, you could kind of continue to like layer and have those pieces loop to kind of extend or contract those 2 themes. And then once you kind of cross that barrier into that last kind of non-controlled segment, then it kind of swaps back over into that final like uprising moment. So that way you're getting that interactivity while it still feels like this curated score. And I was really conscious to like design with that scope in mind, so that it was like feasible to do something like that in a piece, and not just kind of here's my video that I've scored like a film. So so we're imagining we're playing the game essentially, and then if we were to take a long time, then the specific part that we're hearing at the moment would loop and only, or at least only progress until we get to the next part, right? So what I would say too there is that you'd have to be conscious of that really when you're composing for video games. That melody is really part of the reason why it's so great is because it's so it's kind of it's specific. It says something, it's memorable, and that strength can turn into weakness if you let it outstay its welcome. So it'd be useful, I think, to think about a way to deal with that, to soften it, or like Chris said, one great way to do that is to force yourself to move on from it, either by and we might go into like technical game development talk here if we talk about the different ways in which you can, because you can do it with by composing. So you can create a loop that makes sure that the melody doesn't outstay its welcome within that loop. So you make a loop with that melody in it, but you progress it and then move it back to the beginning, something like that. Or you could possibly do it by programming, for example, by finding a way to either maybe not make it a loop and let it play out. So even if the player takes forever, then the music eventually does play out and then starts back up when you get to the next point. Or even coming up with a way to have that melody part be part of sort of the A loop, and then moving the A, or like not a loop, but like the intro, like an A intro, and then moving it into a B loop that's less heavy on that or something. Because that's something I already felt towards the ending of this video now. There's a sort of a crescendo at the end that melody leads into, and it's really exciting. And then we get this swell, and I feel like that's wonderfully wrapped up. And then the melody just kind of continues 1 or 2 extra rounds. And I'm just, by that point, I'm just like, oh, it's just over it. So that's what I would say for a video. It's like, I would just say maybe consider either progressing that melody at that point or ending it there. But if you're composing for a game, then I would think about it in those terms. How do you progress it? How do you make sure it doesn't? It's like I said, it's a melody that grates, that goes straight into your head, maybe into your heart. And with that kind of force, if you do that too much, it can become grating. So So that's something to think about. But I do. I cannot end this any other way than saying that, wow, you guys have all, this is something that I'm noticing, especially now with all this journey videos. You all have this incredible sense of space. Sorry, I don't know if you guys can hear that plane coming over. This incredible sense of space that goes so very well with the vibe that Journey has going. It's something that may seem at first glance, if you just watch these videos like this, it may seem like it's easy to do or something. I'll just slam some reverb on something, but I can assure you it's not. It's hard to do, and it's very well done here.
Thank you, both of you. Thank you so much for those constructive comments, not only to Philly, but to all of us. That was very lovely. Thank you. Next, we have Vijay and his cue, Runaway.
Happy Christmas.
What is it?
Open it.
I haven't got you anything.
Doesn't matter. You can have your initials engraved on that little silver disc.
How'd you afford these?
Christmas club. All bought and paid for. I've been paying in all year.
Thank you.
This looks great, Kathy.
Thank you.
You having one? Come on.
Thank you.
Wow, thank you so much. That was such a good clip. Next, we are going to start with Joost.
Wow, that's just great. I really love it. That build up, that payoff, it's incredible. The moment that's sort of a crescendo that you still keep subtle. It's not overpowering, but at the same time, it really accentuates what you want to accentuate, or what I think you want to accentuate. And it made me sort of feel that sort of rising tension through pretty minimalist means. It's incredibly well done. And then that little break just before that they start to make out, when she gives him that gift and he opens the gift, and it just kind of like turns back to the piano as like sort of a calm before the storm. I'd say masterful. That's incredible. Whatever I have to say about this would be kind of like details or something. Something I could think about is that moment when the sort of like the clicky hi-hat sort of sound comes in, which I absolutely love. But it is a little bit on its own. It's kind of standing out there. It's just really kind of high pitched. You can sort of, it's kind of like right in your ear. And it's kind of by itself there. The other, from what I can tell, the other electronic sound that you have in there is this bass line. So you've got this like really high pitched and then this low pitched, and it kind of leaves space for something in the middle, maybe, or maybe not even in the middle, maybe just below the hi-hat, or maybe you could even sync the hi-hats a little bit more into the mix or something. Either give them some support or maybe bring them back in a little bit. And I think they could sort of like that heartbeat, but more like the kind of like the fluttering of like butterflies in your stomach. Is that the expression, right? Something that you feel a little bit more on the feeling end rather than on the hearing end. So maybe some kind of like extra hi-hat with some delay on it, or I don't know. I'm just spitballing here, but something to support that could maybe just even bring that out even further. But it's kind of a detail because when we go into that scene, I was feeling it. I was feeling that heat. So you're already there. I think you could just push it that little bit further. I think it's incredibly done. The choice of instruments, again, it's minimalistic. Like the other film piece that we saw, there's only a few instruments, but the way you evolve them and the way the melodies sort of weave back and forth, and then instruments come in and go out, and then come back in again. Things join it. Just very well done. Incredible.
Thank you so much. I just have to say about the butterfly thing that you talked about. That's exactly what I was trying to go for with the textures there.
That's
and the
awesome.
Heartbeats. Yeah, heartbeats with the upright bass. Yeah. But the textures, I was trying to get the butterfly sounds going in there in some way. But it's really good feedback. I really appreciate it.
Maybe if you put like some delay on that fluttery sound that has like a filter on it or something, so you get these different layers of the same sound. That's just a thought, but maybe something like that could just kind of like accentuate that flutteriness that you're going for. But that's great that you were going for that. I totally picked up on that. Like that's exactly what I felt. So that's very well done.
Yeah, thank you.
Chris, thank you.
Yeah, I think that sounds like really good and useful feedback. My feelings are very much the same. I think it works extremely well. It again feels deeply empathetic to the characters. I think, the way you've sort of captured the naivety of the Kathy character, that there's a very kind of simple, sweet piano melody that we get. That initial kind of up and down one that you have at the beginning, and then the 5/4 theme that takes us through. I think they seem to characterize the Kathy character in such a perfect way. I thought maybe the rising and falling melody at the end, I'm not sure how smoothly it transitions in some way into the 5/4 theme, but I think that's such a minor thing, and actually when we're just in the film watching it, that really wouldn't be an issue at all. I think the 5/4 thing is really interesting here. Because it's such a sort of sweet, major-ish kind of feeling, but the 5/4 thing just kind of puts it, makes it uneven, sort of unbalanced in a way that perfectly matches and mirrors the relationship. I think there's something very interesting in that musical choice in terms of the storytelling. I think it captures something spot on about that as well. I think it's really great. I guess the other thing is maybe it feels like there could be a bit more variation. I totally agree with your about the comments about the way you are bringing in instruments and varying things in terms of texture. I think that I totally agree. That feels really masterful. I wondered if that could be pushed slightly in some ways, that there's just a bit more variation in that cyclical pattern. But honestly, it just works so well. The moment he sort of comes forward and becomes, there's a sort of increased kind of intimacy as he kind of sort of comes forward towards her near the end of that scene. You bring in this deep, low bass thing. I didn't have this experience the first time I watched it, but just watching it again now, also through Zoom, which gives a different kind of color to the sound. But I thought there was something slightly sinister about that deep bass sound on that extremely intimate, warm moment that felt interesting in a way, but maybe I don't know if it should come in a bit later. It would be interesting to experiment with that kind of thing. But it's fantastic, and it's exactly what you want from a scene like that. That kind of feeling that you've got.
It's a bit cheeky, right? It is a little bit of a cheeky moment. She does tell him. She says something like "not now" or "wait" or something.
Yeah.
So there's also a bit of cheekiness there. It's also a bit of like. It's exciting, but it's also he's a little bit mischievous, maybe.
Definitely, yeah.
So I was sorry. I just have to mention that with the upright bassy sound, I was trying to go for the heartbeat. Yeah, maybe it can be a better refined in a way. You're right. It's a really good feedback. I'm thinking how I could have improved all these things. Yeah. But also I agree with the chords maybe, and how to make it more interesting in a different set of scales, and also to add some form of texture maybe to the build-up. These are the things I'm thinking about. This great stuff. There's so many good thoughts here.
Thank you so much for those very constructive comments. Yeah, thank you. Next, we have Xuwen with Sad and Lonely Journey. wow, that was very well done. Thank you. I think the first panelist we'll call on is Chris.
It's so beautiful. Yeah, those interweaving melodic lines, clarinet, piano, cello, create such a lovely sense of flow in this game, in this section. And you've created such a sort of melancholic, quite a sort of weary feeling in the music. There's a real sense of the kind of exhaustion of the character at this point in the journey. It works so well. But the way you get those melodic lines to interweave and to take us with these threads, kind of as the character's moving through this kind of underwater world, I think works well. There's a kind of sluggishness, slightly, the sense of the character really kind of pushing through the water that I think is so lovely. I think there are moments where we could have more interactivity, I think, with the gameplay. The most obvious example for me is when that kind of dragon-like creature rears up. Your music, in a actually really interesting way, just sort of disregards that and just continues with its lovely slow-moving pace through that, and it doesn't react to that moment. And maybe that's the right choice. Obviously, there's so many different ways of doing these things. Perhaps that's right, just to keep us in that kind of submarine flow. Could very well be, but I thought maybe it would be interesting to have the music kind of respond in some ways. It relates to my other comment, which is that we are very much the same at the end of the cue as we were at the beginning, as we are in the middle. There's a kind of staticness about it. Not a bad thing necessarily at all, but that there's a sort of unchanging textural quality from the beginning to the end. There are obviously moments where there's slightly more density of sound in this trio, including I suppose 4 instruments really. But on the whole, it is pretty much goes along in this lovely flow, sort of continuing without much change. I think there are moments where we could have more kind of textural or harmonic variation going on. I think that could be quite interesting to push and to play with a bit. But there's lovely musical sense that you've created here. Yeah. I'd be interested to hear what Joost thinks about this as a game composer. Yeah.
Thank you, Grace. And for that dragon part, I think I try to use some like the chords, the string chord to support that kind of feeling, but maybe not enough.
I can hear that absolutely. It's subtle, and subtle is often exactly what you want and could be exactly the right thing. But sometimes a bit more drama, a bit more variation could be something worth exploring. I think these things are also interesting to think about one's natural inclination to various things, and actually kind of forcing yourself to do something that might feel a bit strange actually pushes you as a composer into different areas, which is also could be quite useful. But yeah, it's lovely work.
Okay, Joost.
Again, I have to echo Chris's sentiments. It's lovely work. You guys are going to get sick of me talking about space in video games, but this is a really good. I think this is a really great demonstration of what I said earlier, that sometimes it can seem sort of an easy thing where you just slap some reverb on some stuff and it sounds big and that's great, and it sounds good now, and you're reflecting the space that you're in. But we're seeing here, I kind of find it hard to tell just by looking if we're underwater or just subterraneous somewhere. But it doesn't really matter. We're in this sort of, it's still a big space, but it's more enclosed, and you've done a really great job of reflecting that in the music. And what that does is really sort of pull the player into that world. So if you mismatch that, it's really it's a lot harder for players to put themselves in the shoes of the character and to really be in that world. And certainly for games like Journey, I think it's really important to those games that you are invested in that world and that you kind of feel like you're there. It's a place you want to spend time in. And you've done that really well on the instrumentation, on the use of effects, on the way you place it in the space. I think that sounds great. As well as the mood that you're reflecting. Like Chris said, it's sort of a melancholy vibe, almost weary. I'm guessing this a little bit. Again, it's a long time ago that I played Journey, but I'm guessing this is a bit further into the story. I do remember there is a point where the character becomes sort of tired and starts to walk more slowly. And this is really well reflected in that. As to that moment with the dragon, yeah, I agree. It feels a bit like you're disregarding it at the moment, which could work. But if you do want to acknowledge it, again, it depends a little bit on how it would sit in the game. So it's possible by this point, we're wary of dragons and we've seen them a bunch of times. So it can feel appropriate if you ignore it.
Yeah.
But another thing that maybe you could try here is maybe bring something in, maybe bring an instrument in, maybe an instrument that you're already using or something new, and do something like maybe double time, just to give it that sort of extra layer of something else is going on that's a little bit faster paced than just the sort of slow progressing through the world. But you'd have to try something like that to see if it would work. It's almost impossible to tell beforehand. So that's just a thought. You can try other things. You could even try something halftime, but maybe heavier on the bass or something. Or you could go all out and change the entire score at that point. But these are just some things that came up in my mind when I saw that scene and then started thinking about what you guys were talking about. I would also say that, again, if this is game music that loops, then it pays to think about what players feel after a relatively long time. It depends, again, everything depends on how the game is played and how the music is programmed in the game and how it sits. But if you ever have if you ever have something that loops, then it always pays to think about what happens. Basically, the player puts the controller down at that point and walks away. Now, of course, to a reasonable degree, because you can't account for crazy people who just sit in front of their screen for 10 hours listening to the same loop over and over. Everyone's going to go crazy no matter what you write. But it still pays to think about it. What if it carries on quite a bit longer than what you expected? This is something I've noticed in play tests of games that I've worked on. When you work on a game, you think, and equally when you compose for a game, you think, okay, this is kind of how the game is paced and how you progress through it. But inevitably, there's going to be wildly different experiences. Some people take 4 times longer than you think. So it can definitely pay off to think about that. And then in the context of this piece, I would say, after a while, it starts to feel a little bit like it's hard to grab onto it. So there's all these wonderful weaving melodies, and it does wonders to create that feeling of melancholy. But if it keeps on going for a long time, it sort of becomes white noise to your brain, and it kind of you kind of want something to hold on to. That could just be dropping some stuff and making it simpler. That could be having some kind of point where everything comes together and joins something, just so you kind of get out of that what eventually becomes monotony if it goes on too long. So that's something to think about, I would say. But it's a wonderful piece, and the instruments are really well chosen. It was just very well done. I really felt like I was in that world, feeling what that character was feeling. And as I've said before, that's not an easy thing to achieve, and I think you did it. So
thank you so much. Those are some very interesting comments to think about with our compositions moving forward. We have one final piece from Herve, and it is called Untitled. Wow, that was really cool. Thank you. I will call Chris first.
Did you say me?
Yes, Chris.
Great. Cool. Yeah. We've had a chat about this piece before, so you'll know my thoughts about it. But it's great. There's so many things I love about it. I love the way the music kind of takes shape coming out of sort of noise and just pure sound into something that's more like a musical composition, and then kind of goes back into just sound. I think that's great. I love the way the images they are. It is the music on the screen that we see in different, quite differently manifested ways. So your vertical lines of the piece as it unfolds stays on the screen. I think that's lovely. At the same time as the piece is being played visually for us. It seemed on Zoom and not the ideal mode for the piece to be broadcast, because there seems to be a bit of delay between the sound and image. But yeah, in its true form, you get this incredibly precise synchronization. The sound is the image and the image is the sound, and it's fantastic. I love the way it feels like it's rooted in nature. The piece, it comes out of a walk through what sounds like some sort of a natural world in sort of a forest path or something like that. But then sort of the sounds sort of coalesce into musical sounds, and then we end up actually without any kind of human presence, just in the natural world. And it's a lovely trajectory. It feels really interesting. I guess the aspect that I have spoken to you about is I don't know how fair this is, but a slight sense of disappointment when the sort of non-organic sounds from the forest world kind of appear. The sort of the software instruments of percussion. I know I kind of still wonder if it might be a sort of conceptually tighter to have all the sounds being drawn from a walk through a forest kind of thing, and that there would be something quite sort of compositionally pure about that. But one doesn't always want to make compositionally pure pieces, so it's great. I love the in the sort of the second third, when you start to break all the sort of surprising moments in the rhythm that happen. I think there's a fantastic, you sort of surprise the audience, sort of you create an expectation, and then you pull out the music with these kind of moments of silence between it. It's great, fantastic, yeah.
Thank you so much for those comments. Yes.
I agree. This is really, really great. It's a really cool piece. It's kind of left field. It's like unexpected. It's wonderful to hear that Foley sound, the natural world, and then sort of, like you said, it coalesces into a piece of music that sort of straddles the line between, like, there's hardly any melody in there, but they're at the same time it is melodic in a way. It relies a lot on rhythm, which works just so well. It just pushes it forward or something. It's I really love it. Can I ask how you did some of that? Is it all Foley?
It's a mix of both. There are mainly Foley at the beginning, and then he mixes it with some other percussions that I recorded myself, resampled, or just instruments in the DAW.
Yeah. So you recorded. You went out into the forest and you recorded all kinds of different stuff, and then some of that you put into like samplers and sequencers, and then generated the rhythm and stuff. So what are some of those, if you don't mind me asking, what are some of those those kicks and like this sort of gong sound? What kind of sounds are those?
So not everything is Foley and recorded, as Chris said before. So there's a mix of both. Some of mainly the foresty sounds, I've left it untreated or quite untreated. So all the percussive sort of leaf stuff, there's meat stumping on the ground, etc. I just like walking around with a 416 and recording what I can, but mostly percussive stuff and textural. Then there are like gongs, some more other more traditional sounds are from not recorded by myself, so to speak.
Yeah, it sounds great. It works wonderful. It evokes all these sort of vaguely like stories in my mind that I can't quite place what I'm picturing, and that's fantastic because it leaves so much to the imagination, and it sort of just tickles my brain to just come up with these stories with this or something. So it's hugely evocative and narrative, narratively well done as well. So yeah, as the question, how could you improve this or make it even more interesting? Some, I don't know, maybe I have some thoughts, some ideas.
Please,
maybe one thing that I could imagine at some point the energy level sort of reaches a plateau and kind of flattens out a little bit there. You could try and make it even more dynamic, maybe add some slow lumbering, even more powerful punches or something like that, to really, like, only a few maybe, to really accentuate maybe 1, 2, or maybe 3 parts where you just really just blow people away, really kick them where it hurts, or something that sounds really big, to maybe just lift it that extra level. Something else that maybe I was feeling as I was listening to this. So it's this wonderful narrative thing that just as I thought that I was starting to catch on to what you're doing, we reached this sort of open field with the birds, which I thought was fantastic. It's just like, oh, we're in a totally different space now. That's really cool. But then towards the end, I was like missing maybe a little bit of what the beat is doing there. Kind of felt sort of similar to what it was doing in the other space. I don't know that you necessarily want to change that, but it's something to maybe think about. And then particularly the end, it sort of does these, what is it, 2 or 3 hits, and then a couple of clicks, and that sort of ends it. I was kind of maybe thinking, or maybe hoping to be surprised one more time at the end or something. Maybe something that takes us out of that rhythm, or maybe a twist or something. But yeah, again, these are things that you have to try to see if what will work. It's impossible to predict these, because these are kind of like creative directions. So it's kind of impossible to predict how they would pan out. But it's something maybe to start if you're looking for places to maybe lift it that one extra notch, if it makes sense.
Yeah. I have maybe a very quick question on on the format. As Chris said, it's not very well. It's meant to be reactive to, and it is in real life reactive to the dynamics of the sound. And I'd just like to know a bit, like, what's your impression on that? Is there ways to make it better? Is it a nice? Do you find it distracting for you when you're listening to a piece of music, or rather a bit more even into listening to the sound like that? It'd be interesting to pick up your brain on that. Maybe both of you.
When you say reactive, do you mean the visuals reacting to the music?
Yeah.
I thought that worked really well. Like Chris said, it's maybe a bit like Zoom might not be the best a medium for it. I think if you see it on YouTube or wherever else where it's more direct, you can feel the relationship between what you hear and what you see a bit better. Because that timing makes a huge difference when you hear something and you feel that sound, and then you see something, then your brain connects them, and it feels like they're part of the same universe, part of the same space. It's a bit hard to see that over Zoom, but I have looked at it on YouTube, where it's a bit more direct, I mean, it works very well, I think. You built something to.
I sort of stole lots of ideas everywhere from, but I'm using Jitter on Max MSP.
Right. Yeah. So it's a program that essentially translate what you hear into what you see. Yeah. I think it's very cool.
Okay, thank you.
I agree. And what's really interesting about it is you have all these very organic sounds, and we sort of sonically in my head in a forest kind of environment. But then there's this kind of hyper digitalized image of that stuff going on. And I think there's a really interesting kind of tension between those different worlds, but they're so tightly connected because the sync is just so you couldn't even call it sync. It is just they are the same basically. So it's weird and interesting.
Yeah, and I think that sort of juxtaposition between natural world and highly digital sort of visualization, to my mind, it only adds to that sort of air of mystery that you've already got. If you close your eyes and you listen to it, that's already reflected in it too. It's sort of a cross between really rhythmic bits and this natural sounding, that creates this juxtaposition that makes your mind go, what am I hearing? Trying to grab onto it and just barely being able to grab onto stuff. And then it creates a lot of space for stories to sort of kind of make themselves happen. So I think that's wonderfully done.
Yeah,
and it gets quite dense, like a digital forest kind of thing. It's very cool.
Yeah, thank you so much for those comments. That was lovely. Very good job. Thank you. That was our last piece. I would like again to thank all of the participants who submitted lovely work. It was so nice to see my fellow classmates' work again and hear such wonderful comments from our wonderful panelists on us, so we can all grow as students and as composers. We can take these notes and apply them to our own work in different ways, and I think it's opened up very nice ways to think about work collectively. So thank you. I would also like to thank the University and Student Experience Grant for making this festival possible. That is very important. Later today at 4 p.m. we have the linear sound panel, which is going to be run in a very similar format to this, just with different kinds of work and different panelists. So one more time, thank you so much to the panelists for their insightful thoughts and wonderful comments. That has been very lovely to learn from both of you through all of these wonderful compositions the participants have submitted. So thank you so much. If you are interested in watching the full demos, they will be available on the website. I'm sure links will be sent out soon, so you're not missing out on anything, as some of these clips were, of course, cut down for time, so then we did not go over. So thank you so much.
Thanks to you, Elliot, and to Jack, and to everyone else for organizing such a professional platform for this great work. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me as well. And thanks to all the students and to you and to my co-panelist, Chris. I've been honored to be here, and I hope I said some useful things.
You were very useful. You both were. Thank you so much.
See you later. Bye.